Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dealmaker Series. Today I am joined by Dan Vermeire. He is a Managing Director for Corporate Finance Associates. Dan, thank you for joining us today. Tell us about yourself and tell us about the firm.
You bet, James. Nice to see you again. CFA is a pretty good size firm in the lower middle market. We have 15 offices in the U.S., tend to focus on sell side representation, and generally companies with revenues from 300 million down to maybe as low as 10 million. Typically profitable companies, not a lot of startups or distressed firms in our mix. I've been doing this for about 25 years and really enjoy what I do.
Excellent. It's great to have you, and I'm looking forward to your insights. And with that, let's jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the state of deal flow now here in Q3. Is it going up, down, or kind of stagnant?
Yeah, deal flow this year has been sort of sideways movement. Not a lot of deal flow, but plenty. I think the whole economy has been going through some changes, and many business owners have been in a little bit of a wait and see mode.
Yeah, that's been sort of the feeling I've gathered as well through most of the year. Some of the optimism seems to be waning just a little bit, if I say so myself. What sort of deal structures are you seeing mostly now?
Yeah, mostly we're seeing complete buyouts. The businesses that are coming to market are usually ones where the business owner has had the business for a long time and for whatever reason has decided that it's time for him to begin a transition process out of the business. And so on the flip side, on the buyer side, there's a lot of money available, a lot of cash available. It's characterized as way too much cash chasing way too few deals. And so when buyers see something that they want, they typically are making all cash offers just to make sure they don't lose that opportunity.
Now, is that instead of seeing some of these structures that are more risk hedging, like earnouts and rollovers and such, or are those kind of starting to fall off a little bit?
Yeah, you still see some of that. I mean, you see rollover equity a good bit when they want the business owner to stay involved. That happens quite a bit. But we don't see a lot of earnouts anymore right now, at least. When buyers are really competing for the deal, they know that an earnout is usually the least interesting component for most business owners. And so they tend to avoid that, or we negotiate our way out of it to a little more of a consideration at closing type of arrangement for the business owners.
That's an interesting shift that I'm just now hearing. From the first half of the year, there's a lot more earnouts and rollovers and a lot of those risk mitigation tools. And so that's an interesting point. Are you seeing any sort of activity pick up in specific industries or sectors?
Yeah, with the turmoil around tariffs, certain sectors are sort of on pause, sort of waiting for the tariff turmoil to shake out. So that affects things like a lot of manufacturing that's importing product, or at least core product, out of China. Sectors that are strong and continue to be strong, most any service, especially service on infrastructure, people that go in and service a nuclear plant, for example, or service, highways or things. Those are generally pretty strong. Healthcare is generally strong. Animal healthcare, animal products and services are very strong. I do a lot of work in the technology sector, and that's always strong, depending on what it is. But technology continues to be a great area to work in. Food processing is usually very good too. So we spend a lot of time there.
Interesting points. And that, what you said about interest rates, tariffs, that's kind of leading into that next question is, what is the current climate with interest rates and tariffs? I've been reading various reports and hearing chatter around town and such about how those things are starting to set in and affect deals and prices, and those are getting passed down, to the consumer, so on and so forth. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, interest rates, not so much. I think there was a period of time, maybe till end of last year, where buyers kind of paused a little bit. They were trying to figure out how to do business with the new interest rates. But for the most part, they all figured that out now, and they've absorbed that, and they understand how to get deals done and what banks will do for them or not do for them. And so interest rates aren't really much of an issue right now in the range that we work in. Tariffs are a little bit of a unsettling issue. You don't know for sure what's going to happen. Certainly with China, even with Canada, people aren't certain how tariffs are going to be affecting things over the next 2, 3, 4 months. And so some deals that are going to be affected by tariffs are somewhat on pause, waiting to see what's going to happen in that space and let the turmoil kind of settle down and factor that into their deals.
Yeah, I was reading a few different articles recently, actually, around the commercial real estate and residential real estate businesses that are obviously, they pretty much drive DFW
Yeah.
among others. But I was reading about how interest rates are making it more expensive to buy, but the tariff situation is increasing material prices sometimes 20 to 40%. And that was kind of what I was referencing, where vendors are passing that down to developers, so on and so forth. Are you kind of encountering any of that? I don't know if you have a lot of business in CRE, but is that kind of what
Yeah,
you're saying as well?
I don't do much that has a strong real estate component, but as far as companies that manufacture, generally they're always going to have some items that have a tariff on them or tariffs affect them. And we've seen what's really interesting, I think, is that as the government imposes tariffs, there's a discussion about, well, should the manufacturer pass all that on to the customer or not? Try to absorb that within whatever layer of the product development they're in. The manufacturers in China say they're going to absorb some of the tariff. Then when it lands here in the US, those groups say they'll absorb some of the tariffs. And then finally the ultimate company that manufactures or assembles the products, in some cases they're willing to absorb some of the tariffs, which I've just never imagined before. Normally, when there's price increases or inflation or labor increases, those automatically get passed right on down to the customers. It shows up in their pricing, or the pricing will have some sort of a surcharge for tariff or for inflation or whatnot. And I just hadn't really imagined that I'd see some of the layers of the manufacturing process try to absorb some of that tariff on their own. Maybe they figure it'll go back down or something, but you would think sooner or later that would all find its way on down into the eventual consumer price.
Absolutely. That's very interesting insight there. I would have fully expected. I guess maybe it's like you said, it's probably they're thinking it's a temporary situation, so they'll absorb it, to keep the business flowing. That's a pretty friendly business practice
Yeah,
there, I think. I wonder how long that'll last.
I had one client that they prided themselves on not doing any price increases for years, And I thought, okay, that's interesting, but all of your competitors are raising their prices, and there isn't any time like right now to go and raise your prices because everybody would just expect it and absorb it, and assume it's okay. So I think that any good business practice has to be sensitive to all their input prices and manage that out to their customers.
It's nice to hear for a change, so that maybe they're not going to raise the prices, just absorb it, and maybe find alternative solutions to keep their
Yeah, how
margin.
long can you do that though, right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk a little bit more about here at home in DFW or Texas. That what makes our market unique versus the others? Do you think?
Yeah, I travel a good bit and I talk to a lot of different people that live a lot of different places and travel a lot. And strangely, invariably, one of the real key features of DFW comes down to DFW Airport.
Really
You can
interesting.
get home if you live in DFW. You can get home from anywhere on that night. You have meetings in New York, you can get back that night. Whereas California would be a lot harder. Or during the winter when you're traveling cross country and you have your choice to go through Chicago or DFW, you pick DFW and you're not going to have anywhere near the same chance of a weather delay as you do out of Chicago. I see companies headquartering here in DFW. Partly, I mean, our labor pool is so amazing and the diversity of all the sectors is so amazing and all the growth is amazing. But DFW Airport's a big part of that. It's kind of an unsung hero in the deal, I think. On top of that, we have such a robust financial market, so many professionals in the area that know their way around the financial community, such diversity there. It's just a very, very ripe area to try to do business, I think. And so I think a lot of DFW that way.
That's another great insight that I really do appreciate is the airport and the level of business that it can help. And it makes me think about the expansion up in McKinney that's taking place. I'm sure you've heard about that. That's kind of near to my family, and I think we're mostly all looking forward to that expansion and how it's going to grow the economy across the metroplex, but also for McKinney and the immediate surrounding area up there. I think it's a really great point that you made there. Last question, and this is sort of like a looking in the crystal ball, kind of looking forward. What do you think is next for the NA space over the next maybe 6 months to a year or so?
Yeah, the next big thing for us, well, you can't ignore AI, right?
Sure.
And we do a lot in AI in our practice. And they say, AI will not replace a good deal maker, but a good deal maker that uses AI will replace a deal maker. And so it's such a fast growing tool and such a development that, it allows us to do a lot of the work that we do used to take 4 or 5 days. Now you can do in an afternoon. So it's really, really increases our efficiency. I think that's such a big thing for us, is just the way we do our work and the efficiencies that we can pick up through AI. Beyond that, I think like you mentioned interest rates, and they're going to start finding their way down a little bit here in the coming months or years. And clearly that's going to spur a lot of buyers to be a little more aggressive on pricing. And many business owners will decide that now's the right time because they see the pricing is really going up. Pricing on deals, valuations have been strong for quite a while, but I think the growth in valuations has somewhat flattened out over the last year. And so if we see a little decrease in interest rates, that might cause buyers to be more aggressive and see pricing move on up a little bit, which will cause certain sellers to come out of the woodwork and be ready to go in their projects. So I expect that.
One can only hope, as I know those buyers are looking to deploy their capital. Dan, I appreciate your insights. For those of you watching, I hope that you find this as useful as I have. I think some of those insights were absolutely fabulous. If you'd like to find more Dealmaker insights, check out my YouTube channel or my website at jamessackey.marketing. Dan, thank you so much for your time and your insights.
You bet, James. Thank you.